Good afternoon, everyone. This is Adam Keys, a products manager here at TestOut. We're excited to have you join us today. A little bit before we get into the webinar, I want to talk about how the webinar works if this is your first time with us. In your taskbar from GoToWebinar, you will see that there is a questions panel. We will use this since there are quite a few people on the line, we will use this for any questions you have throughout the presentation. If it's something that applies to you directly, I'll just go ahead and answer it to you. If it's something that would be great for the group, I save that to the end with the question and answer, so Greg can help us answer those questions. At the end of the webinar, we will have a short mini 4-question survey just asking you a little bit about yourself and what you thought of the webinar today. So just stick on when we close out the webinar, it'll pop up in a browser automatically on your computer. And so with that being said, I want to introduce Greg, and also we're gonna take a minute to talk about our Cybersecurity Month. So to introduce Greg, he was born in Kentucky. He studied at the University of Louisville with a bachelor's in biology and a master's in teaching and science concentration. He worked for an NSA contractor called BNN for quite some time that became part of General Dynamics. There he worked with top secret IP ATM encryption and secure phones and PDAs. During his time at General Dynamics, he was also able to lead the training department and taught over 6,000 military and government personnel. He now teaches at the Community College of Baltimore County in the Network Technologies Department and holds quite a few industry certifications applied to networking and security. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over for just a couple minutes before we get to Greg to Brooke here at TestOut, and she's going to tell us a little bit about our Cybersecurity Month. So Greg, could you click on the next slide for us so that we can pass over to Brooke?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great, thanks Greg, and thanks Adam. Hi everyone, my name is Brooke, but if you've participated in our Cybersecurity Month, some of you may know me as Agent Wheeler. Our company has been hosting $7,000 in grants and gear giveaways to celebrate National Cybersecurity Month. And the good news is there's still plenty of time to enter, and you could win a Raspberry Pi kit, networking tools, or one of our $1,000 grants. In fact, for those attending the webinar, we'd like to give you a bonus code to enter in the drawing. So if you go to the website, testout.com/cybersecuritymonth, and follow the link Enter to Win to submit the code WEB24G, you can submit it in the form on that page. And if you haven't already, you can try one of the labs, score it and find the secret code in the lab report and submit it so you can have even more chances to win. The giveaway ends October 31st at midnight, so be sure to go there as soon as you can. We have a couple of other fun things happening next week. We have scary stories about cybersecurity. They'll be available all next week and make it fun, make for a fun or a scary listen that you can share with your students. We are also hosting another webinar on Tuesday, October 29th at 11 a.m. This webinar is great for those of you in higher education to learn more about what NSA or National Security Agency Center of Excellence is, why it should matter to your school, and how you can become one. So go ahead and follow that link that's on your screen to learn more about the giveaways, access the scary stories, and to sign up for Tuesday's webinar. We're so excited to hear from Greg, and we really appreciate him being willing to teach us. I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Greg, I'm going to intercept you for 1 second. I forgot to mention one thing before I pass it to Brooke. We will also have a little toolkit giveaway today, so pay attention to the things that Gregory shares. I have a question at the end I'm going to give, and the first 2 people that answer are going to get a TestOut branded toolkit. So with that, sorry for interrupting, but back to Greg.
No worries. Well, thank you everyone for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you all. Adam obviously already did my introduction. And as far as the school, CCBC is my primary school. I teach at a few other schools as well, but I'll get into that later and why that's relevant. So the topic, of course, today is cybersecurity skills, career paths, and skills that students have to know in today's age with cybersecurity. So let's start by looking at where we are now and where we are in terms of employer development as far as meeting employer needs and ensuring students are getting the jobs that they want. So as you can see here on the slides, right now, as it stands, only 3% of all bachelor degrees earned are in cyber. That's a pretty small number. And it even says related field, so that could be computer science as well. However, opportunities for cyber are increasing around 7 to 8% per year currently. And if you've been on websites like dice.com, that's www.dice.com, or SoloGig, 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 those are job sites dedicated to cyber, engineering type technical fields. So they're just for those. And if you just popped on dice.com at the moment, you'd find in the United States alone, there are about 80,000 positions open, roughly. It varies obviously day to day. So we have these job openings that we just can't fill. If you look on, and I'll show you a slide in a moment, that people aren't even clicking on cyber positions anymore when they're talking about applying for positions or looking for positions. In addition to that, I went to a Cisco conference recently, and they talked about employer needs being met, and the overall percentage was 17% that our students who are graduating college are ready for a cyber position, and that's obviously woefully short of where we need to be. In fact, as far as the K-12 level goes, we're only looking at around 35% of schools that even have a program that's dedicated to computer science. And notice it's not cyber, it's just computer science. So we're not producing students at the high school level that are ready for cyber. The estimate is by 2021, we're going to have 3.5 million unfilled cyber jobs. That's just a crazy number when you really think about it. I can tell you from my experience of dealing with NSA, a lot of different contractors over the years, I still do different work for the Army and different folks, that we are just not producing in any significant quantity the numbers that we need, and the quality is not as good as it should be. So, students often hear, and they're right, that there are tons of jobs in cyber. We have all these positions open, they're high-paying jobs, but they don't necessarily have the skills or the drive or even the understanding of what they're even getting into. And part of what we need to do as a group is prepare students to understand what it is they're going to be doing, because it's often true that they get that job and then they hate it, but they need to know what the opportunities are, and they just don't. They just don't know. Cyber is just this nebulous thing out there that they don't understand. I can't tell you how many times I've had students come to me and just ask, well, what kind of jobs are there? What can I do? And they have no clue, and this is at the college level, what it even means to have a position in cyber. So let's move on to the next one slide here. So looking at this just for a second here, just to show you, this is around the world, of course, the amount of job postings and people who are actually actively clicking on these links and these job postings for cyber, and as you can see there in the United States on the far right of the slide, that was that 7 to 8% I was talking about. And then, of course, it's decreased on that. So look at India. Look at the numbers there. I mean, we're talking almost 40% in terms of that. There are other places, obviously, the numbers are a little different. But, this is a problem for us as far as the United States is concerned, that we just don't have the qualified people to fill these types of positions that we need. So what do we need? Okay, what are the skills that we need? So one of the biggest ones that I hear about, and I've talked with, again, some industry partners about this, is that we just don't have an understanding of how malware works, how viruses, Trojans, worms, etc., how those actually are propagated, and how that actually becomes an actual threat. And then the analysis of these malware threats, how do we reverse engineer that? Does a student understand, what a cross-site scripting attack is? Do they understand how a vector is delivered with a virus or a payload? An attack vector is utilized. And obviously, with specific courses, this can be mitigated. They can learn these things, but we don't necessarily have that available to students at levels, when they're in maybe high school, or certainly even in some other courses in computer science. It's just this. It's relegated only, it seems, to cyber. I'll tell you a story. So here at the college, and I'm sure a lot of other folks can relate, a recent change occurred where all external emails now have this big yellow banner that says, effectively, warning, this is from an external email. So take caution with this. For the first time ever at my school, we implemented mandatory cybersecurity training for all employees because we were getting hit with phishing attacks and people were clicking on emails and links, and malware was just becoming a serious issue because simply put, there's just no awareness, or basically very little awareness of how this works. And this is amongst, college professors and faculty. So we've had to make those changes here so that people can understand how the attacks are changing, because it is changing. The way people are using phishing attacks and then vishing, which of course is the voice form of that, where people calling up. I can tell you I get tons of calls, and I actually welcome them because I want them to call, especially during a class. So I can use an example of anything from the IRS scam to the 0% credit card scam to one of my favorite ones was the day when the new iPhones came out. They were calling around saying that your iPhone or Apple ID had basically been hacked and that they were trying to get information on my phone. So these types of attacks are they're not getting less, they're getting worse, and they're ramping up, and they're becoming much more sophisticated in the ways they're attacking people, right? Through social engineering techniques like those I just mentioned, but also the malware has become more sophisticated. So we really need that to be something students understand, not only how is it developing out there in the world, but how do we reverse this, right? Which brings me to my next point, thinking like a black hat. Well, if you don't know what a black hat is, a black hat would be the equivalent of the certified ethical hacker, which I happen to be a CEH. That's the white hat. The black hat's the evil one. That's the person who knows all these things and uses them for bad purposes, stealing, you name it, right? Defacing websites, denial of service attacks, etc. So we need to have students who understand, or at least can think like the bad guy thinks, right? Not everybody's going to go out and become a certified ethical hacker or take the CompTia Pen Test Plus, which is fairly new, which is equivalent to their CEH. They're not going to do that. So what do we do with the other cyber folks, just to make sure they understand how a black hat thinks? How does the bad guy think? In addition to that, cloud, of course. Cloud services have been around for some time now. Of course, it used to be just storage. Now it's everything from infrastructure as a service to platforms as a service, and infrastructure being the biggest one of the two, but everything in between. Software as a service, even security as a service, Alien Vault, FireEye, etc. We have to understand how that potential threat is there, keeping in mind how we maintain access to our materials and our data. How do we make sure that it's secure, it's confidential, and the integrity is also maintained, the CIA, if you will, of security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Mobile devices. BYOD, bring your own device, right? Everybody wants to carry just one phone. We don't want to carry two phones. We don't like to have a company phone. We want to carry our whatever preferred phone is. How do we deal with that, right? So what are the means that we can make sure that's secure? Data segregation, remote wipe, etc. These things are all very important in the mobile world. And as it gets to my next point here, it's going to get even a little crazier, a little worse. What's IoT? I'm sure most of you know what IoT is. It's Internet of Things. Things are just becoming more and more wired or wireless into our networks daily. TVs, refrigerators, I mean, you name it, just about. You have, I've seen weight scales that are wireless that will report the data back to your phone when you step on a scale. Well, these are all potential problems, right? Any kind of embedded system, which again is going to have a very fixed firmware or software, there may not be any security considerations once it's released. So how do we deal with that? How do we make sure that we secure all these things from the ground up? Programming languages. A lot of folks think computer science is just where programming is, but I can tell you in cyber, in many ways, it's just as important. I gave a few examples here, C++ and Perl and Python and whatnot, but Python is one of the ones, and Ruby have been requested by numerous organizations that students have an understanding. And at the very least of those things, students have to understand how programming works and be able to construct basic scripts or any kind of basic code, and look at code and be able to analyze and understand that code. Other big picture things here, well, we've got system architecture. How does that all work together? Virtualization, VMs, virtualization is a big thing now, has been for a while. It allows us to consolidate our hardware. We can reduce the space and power requirements. We can utilize hardware in a much more efficient manner when we do virtualization. And from a true cyber perspective, you could even use virtual machines as FireEye does to detonate unknown threats in a virtual machine to see what they actually do. We don't have to worry about zero-day situations in that sense, because everything it gets, if it doesn't know, if it doesn't meet a signature file, we just let it detonate and see what actually happens, and then we'll know, right? Because it's in a virtual machine, no harm, no foul. The machine is simply recreated after they're done, and they can actually go back and now see who did this and why they sent it. And it's a much more efficient method of analyzing malware. Defense in depth, understanding that at every layer from the ground up, you are building defense and security into something. The software that's written, the platform it runs on, the network it resides on, everything has to have some element of security, and should. So that if one layer is broken, you might have or should have another layer that's going to catch that issue. So defense in depth is something as well. I've mentioned cloud already, but more of the understanding of the cloud-based systems and how those work. Operating systems, I can tell you, Linux has been something that comes up all the time. It has been something that comes up all the time, that people just think Microsoft just almost exclusively. Microsoft. Well, Microsoft's not the end-all. It's certainly not the be-all. Linux skills, command line interface skills are in need. I cannot tell you how many times students will have no exposure to Linux. And I'm not going to call anybody by name, of course, but I went to a blue team, red team competition at a institute here in Baltimore called Baltimore Cyber Range. And we were there with other professors. And of the group of professors there were 6 of us at the time. I would say, honestly, myself and only one other person had any understanding of Linux. And it was really kind of scary to me that we had 4 others that were cybersecurity professors who didn't know the basics of Linux. That's a problem, obviously, that we have to fix on our end, that we need qualified people. I believe firmly that professors need to stay current on the materials. They need to take the certification exams. They need to maintain current abilities, and you just can't rest on some certification you got 10 years ago. It doesn't work that way, or shouldn't work that way. Of course, command line interface is going to be important with Cisco as well, but again, if you don't take a Cisco course or Linux course, students miss out on this. And then, of course, as always, hands-on practical experience. How do we do this? What's the most efficient way? I mean, TestOut has some great tools for that, and I'm not just saying that just because they're called. They really do. But there's an issue with students who get out in the field or get to a job and they've never touched actual equipment. They've never laid hands on a router or a switch and never plugged in a cable before. It's all done through some sort of software, which, again, they vary wildly in how good they are. There's some really great stuff out there, but we really need to get that hands-on experience for students, and we can't force them somehow. Sometimes you just wish they would want to do it on their own, but sometimes we just do have to make them do it. So that's a big one right there. Move on here. So let's look at the jobs. Now we have the pathways. Let's look at some paths. So here are the top 10 positions in cybersecurity in the United States right now, and the salaries. And you can see, if you just drop right to number 10, you're still knocking on 6 figures as information manager. Secure application security. So security, again, number 1 thing here, director of information security. Dropping down, there's cloud right there at number 4, and number 6, penetration tester, or basically a CEH. Okay. Risk management, that's a whole other ballgame, and there are various risk management certifications out there that people can get, and that's an important one, of course, as well. I wanted to backtrack real quick on something I was talking about with embedded systems and Internet of Things. Again, I know you guys can't answer, but I'm sure people know about the Target hack that happened a few years ago. You know how they got into the system? Do you know how they hacked Target? They hacked them through the HVAC. They hacked them through the HVAC system that they had there. That's how they got in. An embedded system like that has probably never been touched or updated, and perhaps never was secure from the beginning, and that's how they did it. So we have to be conscious of these other systems out there. Anything that's on your network could be a threat to your network, and it was for Target, obviously. Move on here. So what do we do? What do we do to help alleviate this need? Well, there's lots of things, obviously. There are a lot of resources just at schools themselves. I mean, a lot of folks don't even know about what they have at their own college or school. I'll give you an example. I work for UMUC, which is now UMGC now, and they have a service called Books 24/7. And what it is it's not just a library of books for their particular courses they're in, but anything. I mean, anything that the school offers. we're talking about, Certified Ethical Hacker, CompTia, Security Plus, Net Plus, materials that would cost them, $40, $50, $60 a book. They have access to all of it. And you know what? Nobody knows about it. I've not had a single class of mine know about these resources that they have available to them. Students are always just extremely happy to hear that they don't have to pay for this stuff. It's just out there waiting for them. But I would venture to say that many of the professors don't know these resources exist, right? And I would admit when I came here, I didn't know, okay? So you've got to learn what your resources are, because that way you can give them to the students, right? If you don't know what the students have available to them, then how are you supposed to help them, okay? Here are some things that on this slide here that I wanted to show you. This is just a few. So Cisco developed what they call the Cyber Defense Clinic for Education program. And this program is completely free. It's through millions of dollars of virtual machines and hardware, where they have all these different lab activities you can do. I gave you some of them here: intrusion detection systems, intrusion protection systems, anomaly detection, Splunk, QRadar. There are many. And they will actually come out to your school and train you if you want. They'll come work with your students. You can do everything from high school level, not making less than high school, but high school level and above, training with them. This is very cyber specific. Okay, I included a link here. If you want more information, you can sign up on that link. NYSERC's another one. This is more STEM focused, but they have a lot of cyber type resources available on that site that I think are really good. The last one I listed here, it's one of my personal favorites, and it's not well known. It's called Code Combat, and this is one that uses gamification. If you don't know what that is, it's basically using games to teach or games to educate, where students learn to do programming. It does Python, for example, the very language I just talked about before. You can learn to program in Python, actual code, but it's an adventure game style format that's extremely fun, and it's any age-appropriate type of thing that you could use. And it has separate logins for teachers, so you can create your own classrooms on here. You could make it part of your curriculum if you wanted to. You could make it extra credit, whatever you like. But you can have your own classroom. Students join your classroom with the code. It's all 100% free, and then they can learn Python. I can't recall the other languages on there. I know, but Python's one of the ones I use. These are just three of several resources that you could find out there to help expand students' knowledge on just anything cyber related, or again, even programming here. To that end, I want to talk a little bit about certifications. So certifications are a big thing and will continue to be a big thing. If I had a dime for every student who asked me, which certifications do I get? Well, there are literally hundreds of certifications, from ISC squared certifications, EC Council, SANS, CompTia. There are so many, and the challenge for me was trying to come up with each individual's needs for what they wanted to do. So I modified things a little bit, and here's what I tell students. I tell students to get the trifecta of certifications, and that would be a software cert, a hardware cert, and an operating system cert. Now, I know software and operating system could be muddled together, but hear me out. I'm sorry, excuse me, I said that wrong. Policy cert, hardware, and software/operating system. So policy, again, hardware, and software/operating system. So for a policy cert, CEH would qualify that. Okay, Certified Ethical Hacker is much more policy than it is anything else. But certainly something like a Security Plus would be policy, right? CISSP, CASP, those are all policy-related certs. Software certs or operating systems would be obvious, right? So you get a Linux Plus, a Red Hat, a Microsoft, even VMware certs are out there and available. And then you want a hardware cert, Cisco routing and switch and CCNA, okay, for example, on that one. This tells me and tells any employer that if you can accomplish a certification in any of these three areas, or all three areas, that you can do whatever job it is I need you to do. The funny thing is, we all know nobody performs an actual job what's in any of those certifications. You take the Security Plus exam or the Network Plus, nobody does exactly what's in all of those particular exams, except for one group of people. And that would be the people that are teaching those exams, the professors themselves. So the irony is that people like us, for those on here that are educators, we're the ones who actually need to know that material inside and out for our actual job. But nobody else really does. It just demonstrates the skills that you need to have in order to accomplish a particular profession or job, to do the job that you need to do. So in summary here, okay, so we are definitely not producing enough qualified individuals. We have individuals who don't know what's out there, what jobs are out there, what they can even do with those types of qualifications if they had them. We are declining as a country in terms of producing qualified cyber people, and this is something we need to think about seriously as a nation. As other countries, and you know who I'm referring to, produce more cyber individuals than we do, and we get less and less, we're going to be at a deficit and be at a security deficit in this country before too long. We're lacking in programming skills, malware, understanding cyber threats, programming, operating systems. There's so many areas that we just aren't succeeding at. The tools are out there, though. Organizations like Cisco, Microsoft, even Google, I mentioned a few here, they have tools for us to use, and in many cases, these tools are going to be free. You don't have to pay for them. But know what you have to offer first at your school. Know what resources you have right there, and then you can always expand. I didn't mention it, but Cybrary, it's like library with size. Cybrary is a professional organization of instructors and educators who post, in many cases, hours and hours of video for just even one particular course or class. It's not all free, but they have a lot of free stuff that is really good for introductory activities, networks, Linux, operating systems, etc. And then, of course, you can pay for different ones that are a little bit better. That would be even better for that. So that would be something that is also available. So Cybrary is another resource. And I think with that, we have one more slide here, and that's the Q&A and then some other test out materials. So I will go ahead and stop now and wait for questions.
Thank you, Greg. All right, before we get to questions, just as you think of those and get those into the questions panel, I have a question for the first two people that get this right in the question box. Will get a TestOut branded toolkit. It has little tools for, say, opening up your desktops and working on them. But the question is something that was towards the start of the webinar, and it is how many jobs in cybersecurity will be unfilled by 2021? Bam. Marty Rin and Charles Hoff, you were the first two, and I think you hit it before I even finished saying it. So you guys all paid attention very well. There's a whole lot of 3.5 millions. But Marty and Charles, if you could just drop your email address in the questions box, I will send an email over to you so we can get your shipping address for that. All right, so before I start asking the questions that we have so far, as Brooke said at the beginning, we're doing TestOut Cybersecurity Month. We've got some tools, resources, giveaways. Visit our website at testout.com/cybersecurity month. There is on there a section where you can enter into, we've got codes, if you've been following along, we've got codes in various labs that you can enter for a chance to win grants and different networking tools and cool cybersecurity tools. So if you go through that, enter code WEB24G in the box, and you'll be entered into that drawing for we have 6 different $1,000 grants for your classroom, and we also have other prizes that we're giving away as well. We have another webinar that's scheduled for October 29th. That's next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And this is a little bit more specialized of a webinar. It is talking about how to become an NSA Center of Excellence, the requirements and what you need to do to get on board there. So if that's something you're looking at in your program, that's something we definitely talk to. And as always, we have a variety of courses here at TestOut. If you're not familiar with us, we encourage you to visit. We give free instructor access to anyone who's interested in looking at our products, and there's a nice list of them right there. So again, Greg, thank you very much for spending some time with us and teaching the skills. I have had a couple questions come in, and if you do have questions right now, go ahead and enter them in the question box, and I'll deliver them up. But the first one I had was we looked at some skills, some careers that they could do. What are some of the things you do to help get students into entry-level careers? How do you get them from classroom to job?
Right. So that's a great question. We have actually an individual here that is actually dedicated to that particular role. His name's Ed Roberts. And what he does is he reaches out to businesses and he essentially develops a relationship with different companies who are looking for interns, perhaps, maybe shadowing positions, if they have actual open positions. And we will either directly link those with the students, or in some cases here, we actually have a cyber club group that will come in and they'll speak to our students and recruit kind of directly in there. So, for example, I just had an organization reach out to me that I have 25 positions coming open for entry level, and I transfer that to Ed, and Ed will be able to manage that. But we have a dedicated person who works with students to facilitate a connection with outside businesses and corporations. In addition to that, we also have, of course, with the college, there's resume help. There's different placement services within the college itself. So we don't just teach them the stuff and abandon them. We have people here who are dedicated to bridging the gap between classroom to job.
Great. And then you did mention a lot of preparing students with the skills they need to be successful. So giving them that basis of skills so that when they go into interviews, they know their stuff and know what they're looking at.
Right, and I want to add to that, don't forget the soft skills, folks. I mean, soft skills are so important, and a lot of times we get so focused on, the technical aspect of this, making sure you can configure that router, you can, install this operating system, whatever it might be, all your security policies and port numbers, fine. But then they don't teach them how to do a proper interview. They don't necessarily understand how to just sit down and have a conversation with some people. So it's not in our wheelhouse necessarily to teach that part, but we can't deny that. We cannot forget that soft skills are a vital element to securing that position. It's one thing to get your foot in the door, but you can't blow the interview. You've got to go in there and have that done right. Okay, so we can't forget about that crucial piece to this.
Okay, the next question we have, you kind of went over this a little bit, but what are some of the most common entry-level certifications for cyber professionals, if we could just hit that again?
No problem. So we'll start with the basic one's A+, right? So A+ is what I call low-hanging fruit. If a student has the skills to get it, absolutely get it. The more certs on your resume, the better. It's obviously entry-level. So certs like A+, Net+, and for CompTia and Security Plus are the core certifications to have. So those are obviously recommended. The other ones you can do, there's one called a VMware Associate. VMware Associates are unproctored, so students can self-study. They can take it at home without being the stress of a Pearson testing center. And there's several of those. I believe there are 5, but they're called VM Associates. Again, you can Google this and see this. So those are also great for entry-level stuff. As I mentioned again with the trifecta, you want to have your bases covered if you can with the hardware and then the policy and the operating system. So another one is Linux LPIC1. It's a very introductory Linux cert. But LPIC1 it's the simplest one, but it is something they could get if they have a little bit of Linux experience. And I'm telling you, Linux is a hot one to have right now. So that's an entry-level one. So VM, okay, so that's, yeah. Those would be some of the core entry levels that they could get. One more time, try to get the trifecta covered. Try to get that hardware policy and software/operating system, and you'll be good to go.
Great. Okay. And then another question is, I know you're on the East Coast, so do you have a lot of students that go into government agencies, and is there a way that they need to get their foot in the door to do so?
Yeah, so that's also a good question because I get this a lot. So yes, I live in the highest area of concentration for government jobs in the United States. So that's obviously something that comes up a lot. Yes, a lot of our students do eventually go into the government sector here. One challenge that we have with that is that a lot of our students aren't necessarily, they're not U.S. citizens, so attaining a clearance is going to be effectively impossible for them to do so. But, there are jobs in the commercial world that are available. There are lots of contractors out here. There are lots of commercial entities that may not require a clearance, but it is, I'm not going to lie, it is a challenge for us because I couldn't give you an exact number off the top of my head, but I think it would be fair to say that probably a good 20% of our students are not U.S. citizens, or at least have a background where their parents are not U.S. citizens. And even if they are U.S. citizens, with the fact that their parents are not, could be a problem. So for everybody else not in that situation, yeah, the government jobs are going to be one of the most targeted and most prolific, because this is where cyber tends to lean, right? With every 3-letter agency, or 4-letter agency for that matter too, we have a need for this cyber. So it is a challenge for us. But yes, a lot of our students do go into the government positions, but a lot of them, because of the situations, they're seeking a non-government position that doesn't require security clearance, right? Security clearances are something I talk about frequently. And we can maybe sidebar there if somebody has any other questions on, you know, the SF-86 and all that fun stuff and how that works. But we can get to that. That's someone to contact me if they have other questions about that. So there you go.
Okay. Perfect. And then another question in there, it had a couple come through, is beyond doing one cert in policy, hardware, and software OS, are there any areas that you see as being a great specialization right now where there's an even higher need?
I would say it kind of aligns with the jobs that were on that particular slide. Yeah, I mean, there are certs, for example, Red Hat Linux is always going to be popular because it's a specialized version of Linux, but Linux certs are really, really on the rise. Your penetration testing, right? So that's fairly new. So there's CH for a while. There's anything in the CH pen test realm, but particularly pen test plus is gaining a lot of popularity over CH. In fact, I would encourage you, for several reasons, for cost and because of the application process that has to go along with the CH, that I would steer people more towards the CompTia Pen Test Plus exam. It's much cheaper, and again, it's easy to take it. So those are two. Well, Cisco is changing their CCNA, if you didn't know that. So February of 2020, that's going to be different. So I would imagine that the new, when that comes out with the new cert, people are going to want you to have that completely revamped one. But the long story short is all certs are good certs. The more you can have, the better. But one more to add to that is some VMware. So VMware, especially a DCV, data center virtualization. So we work with these different data centers. You got your VMware and Amazon Cloud Services, so the AWS. So Amazon certs are actually becoming pretty popular as well. So we can't deny anything cloud-based. Cloud-based certs, virtualization certs are going to be extremely popular going forward.
Great, thank you. And so there's a really interesting question Leonardo posted on here that I think is interesting. Do you foresee artificial intelligence, AI, killing cybersecurity jobs in the future?
Only if we're talking about the Terminator. My answer to that is in the future is nebulous. Maybe one day, but not probably during our lifetimes. The thing with AI is still very rudimentary, and it doesn't have anywhere near the capacity or problem solving that we think that it does. Sure, it can automate things, it streamlines things. We do it right now, right? We have all sorts of things that use AI to make decisions on a limited basis. But as far as eliminating cyber positions, I don't see it coming anytime soon. It just doesn't have the sophistication level it needs to in order to think like a hacker, think like a black hat or a white hat or a cyber analysis or any of those sorts of systems. We just don't have, we're not there yet. And foreseeably, based on what, I like this sort of stuff, I read these things, maybe 40, 50, 60 years from now, it might be a paradigm shift. But all I see AI being at the moment is something that helps us automate and make things a little more streamlined at the moment. But we're always going to need a human interaction for the foreseeable future.
Excellent. All right. Well, we do have a few more in there, but we're gonna wrap up. Greg told me that he is more than happy to have those of you who have additional questions reach out to him and contact him. Gregory, am I good to put your email address in the chat to everybody?
Yeah,
real quick?
yeah, sure. I mean, we get that here. Where is the chat back? There it is.
So you'll want the question tab.
Is.
I can send it in there too. Do you want your work email in there?
Yeah, here, I'll do it right now.
Okay. And I've had this question come up. The recording of this webinar will be available. We will send out the link in a couple days, hopefully by tomorrow if we're really quick. We've got to compile it and get it posted online. We'll get the recording out to you, the slide deck out to you, and make sure that you have that at your use. Again, there's 4 short questions as soon as we close out. So if you could just hang on, answer those if they apply to you. If not, don't worry about it. We're very grateful for Greg Schmidt for being on the line with us and sharing with us his expertise. And if I don't know if it came through in the questions, I think it came through the chat, but I will post his email really quick in the, let's see, Daryl said this was an excellent webinar. Thank you, Daryl. And I responded to all Gregory's email address. So it's right in there. If you see it, I'll give you a couple seconds to follow it. If not, really just search Gregory Schmidt at the Community College of Baltimore County and it pops up on Google, so he's not hidden. And again, thank you all for joining us today. There's a survey that'll pop up, and we look forward to seeing a lot of you again on the 29th when we talk about NSA Centers of Excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.